Section 3. Self-contempt. The third trial. Interior humiliations. Contemptible as they are in the eyes of others, the souls raised by God to this state are far more contemptible in their own. There is nothing either in what they do or in what they suffer that is not altogether paltry and humiliating. There is nothing striking in anything about them, all is quite ordinary. Nothing but troubles and afflictions interiorly, and contradictions and disappointments exteriorly. With a feeble body requiring many alleviations and comforts, the very reverse one would think of that spirit of poverty and austerity so much admired in the saints. Neither heroic undertakings, nor fasts, large alms, nor ardent and far-reaching zeal can be discerned in them. But united to God by faith and love, they behold in themselves nothing but disorder. They despise themselves still more by comparison with those who pass for saints, and who, besides adapting themselves with facility to rules and methods, show nothing irregular either in their persons or actions. Therefore their own shortcomings in this respect fill them with confusion and are unbearable to them. It is on this account that they give way to sighs and tears, marking the grief with which they are oppressed. Let us remember that Jesus Christ was both God and man. As man he was destroyed, and as God he remained full of glory. These souls have no participation in his glory, but they share in the sadness and misery of his sufferings. Men regard them in the same way as Herod and his court regarded Jesus Christ. These poor souls, therefore, are nourished as to their senses and mind with a most disgusting food, in which they can find no pleasure. They aspire to something quite different, but all the avenues leading to the sanctity they so much desire remain closed to them. They must live on this bread of suffering, on this bread mingled with ashes, with a continual shrinking, both exterior and interior. They have formed an idea of saintliness, which gives them constant and irremediable torment. The will hungers for it, but is powerless to practice it. Why should this be, except to mortify the soul in that which is its most spiritual and intimate part, which, finding no satisfaction or pleasure in anything that happens to it, must needs place all its affection in God, who conducts it this way for the express purpose of preventing it taking pleasure in anything but him alone. It seems to me that it is easy to conclude from all this that souls abandoned to God cannot occupy themselves, as others do, with desires, examinations, cares, or attachments to certain persons. Neither can they form plans, nor lay down methodical rules for their actions or for reading. This would imply that they still had power to dispose of themselves, which would entirely exclude the state of abandonment in which they are placed. In this state, they give up to God all their rights over themselves, over their words, actions, thoughts, and proceedings, over the employment of their time, and everything connected with it. There remains only one desire, to satisfy the master they have chosen, to listen unceasingly to the expression of his will in order to execute it immediately. No condition can better represent this state than that of a servant who obeys every order he receives, and does not occupy his time in attending to his own affairs. These he neglects in order to serve his master at every moment. These souls, then, should not be distressed at their powerlessness. They are able to do much in being able to give themselves entirely to a master who is all-powerful, and able to work wonders with the feeblest of instruments if they offer no resistance. Let us, then, endure without annoyance the humiliations entailed on us in our own eyes and in the eyes of others by what shows outwardly in our lives. Or rather, let us conceal ourselves behind these outward appearances and enjoy God who is all ours. Let us profit by this apparent failure, by these requirements, by this caretaking and the necessity of constant nourishment and of comfort, of our ill success, of the contempt of others, of these fears, uncertainties, troubles, etc., to find all our wealth and happiness in God, who by these means gives himself entirely to us as our only good. God wishes to be ours in a poor way, without all those accessories of sanctity which make others to be admired, and this is because God would have himself to be the sole food of our souls, the only object of our desires. We are so weak that if we displayed the virtues of zeal, almsgiving, poverty, and austerity, we should make them subjects for vainglory. But as it is, everything is disagreeable, in order that God may be our whole sanctification, our whole support, so that the world despises us, and leaves us to enjoy our treasure in peace. God desires to be the principle of all that is holy in us, and therefore what depends on ourselves and on our active fidelity is very small, and appears quite contrary to sanctity. There cannot be anything great in us, in the sight of God, except our passive endurance. Therefore let us think of it no more. Let us leave the care of our sanctification to God who well knows how to effect it. It all depends on the watchful care and particular operation of Divine Providence, and is accomplished in a great measure without our knowledge, and even in a way that is unexpected and disagreeable to us. Let us fulfill peacefully the little duties of our active fidelity, without aspiring to those that are greater, because God does not give himself to us by reason of our own efforts. We shall become saints of God, of his grace, and of his special providence. He knows what rank to give us. Let us leave it to him, and without forming to ourselves false ideas and empty systems of sanctity, let us content ourselves with loving him unceasingly, and in pursuing with simplicity the path he has marked out for us, where all is so mean and paltry in our eyes, and in the estimation of the world. Section 4. Distrust of Self. The fourth trial of souls in their state of abandonment, the obscurity of their state, and their apparent opposition to the will of God. For a soul that desires nothing else but the will of God, what could be more miserable than the impossibility of being certain of loving him? Formerly it was mentally enlightened to perceive in what consisted the plan for its perfection, but it is no longer able to do so in its present state. Perfection is given to it, contrary to all preconceived ideas, to all light, to all feeling. It is given by all the crosses sent by Providence, by the action of present duties, by certain attractions which have in them no good beyond that of not leading to sin, but seem very far from the dazzling sublimity of sanctity and all that is unusual in virtue. God and his grace are given in a hidden and strange manner, for the soul feels too weak to bear the weight of its crosses and disgusted with its obligations. Its attractions are only for quite ordinary exercises. The ideal it has formed of sanctity reproaches it interiorly for its mean and contemptible disposition. All books treating of the lives of the saints condemn it. It can find nothing in vindication of its conduct. It beholds a brilliant sanctity which renders it disconsolate, because it has not strength sufficient to attain to it, and it does not see that its weakness is divinely ordered, but looks upon it as cowardice. Those whom it knows to be distinguished for striking virtue, of sublime contemplation, regard it only with contempt. What a strange saint, say they, and the soul, believing this, and confused by its countless useless efforts to raise itself from this low condition, is overwhelmed with opprobrium, and has nothing to advance in its own favor, either to itself or to others. The soul in this state feels as if it were lost. Its reflections afforded no help for its guidance or enlightenment, and divine grace seems to have failed it. It is, however, through this loss that it finds again that same grace substituted under a different form, and restoring 100-fold more than it took away by the purity of its hidden impressions. This is, without a doubt, a death blow to the soul, for it loses sight of the divine will, which, so to speak, withdraws itself from observation to stand behind it and push it on, becoming thus its invisible principle, and no longer its clearly defined object. Experience proves that nothing kindles the desire more than this apparent loss. Therefore the soul vehemently desires to be united to the divine will, and gives vent to the most profound sighs, finding no possible consolation anywhere. A heart that has no other wish but to possess God must attract him to itself, and this secret of love is a very great one, since by this way alone are established in the soul sure faith and firm hope. It is then that we believe what we cannot see, and expect to possess what we cannot feel. Oh, how much does this incomprehensible conduct of an action, of which one is both subject and instrument, tend to one's perfection without any visible sign of appearance. Everything that one does seems done by chance or natural inclination, and is very humiliating to the soul. When inspired to speak, it seems as if one spoke only from oneself. One never sees by what spirit one is impelled. The most divine inspiration is a terror, and whatever one does or feels is a source of constant self-contempt, as though it were all faulty and imperfect. Others are always admired, and one feels very inferior to them, while their whole way of acting causes confusion. The soul distrusts its own judgment, and cannot be certain about any of its thoughts. It pays excessive submission to the least advice given by a respectable authority, and the divine action, in thus keeping it apart from striking virtue, seems to plunge it into deeper humiliation. This humiliation has no appearance of virtue to the soul. According to its own idea, it is pure justice. The most admirable thing about it is, that in the eyes of others whom God does not enlighten, and even in its own eyes, the soul appears actuated by feelings absolutely contrary to virtue, such as pure obstinacy, disobedience, troublesomeness, contempt, and indignation, for which there seems no remedy. The more earnestly the soul strives to overcome these defects, the more do they increase, because they form part of the design of God, as being the most suitable means of detaching the soul from itself to prepare it for the divine union. It is from this sad trial that the principal merit of the state of abandonment is gained. Now, all is of a nature to withdraw the soul from its narrow path of love and simple obedience, and it requires heroic virtue and courage to keep firm in plain active fidelity, and to sing its part in a song that seems to express in its tones that the soul is mistaken and lost, while grace sings a second. It does not hear this, however, and if it has courage to let the thunder roll, the lightning flash, and the tempest roar, and to walk with a firm tread in the path of love and obedience, of duty, and of the present attraction, it can be compared to the soul of Jesus during his passion, when our divine Saviour walked steadfastly in the fulfilling of the will of his Father, and in his love which imposed upon him a task apparently quite inconsistent with the dignity of a soul of such sanctity as his. The hearts of Jesus and Mary, bearing the fury of that darkest of nights, let the clouds gather and the storm rage. A multitude of things in appearance most opposed to the designs of God and of his order overwhelmed their faculties, but though deprived of all sensible support, they walked without faltering in the path of love and obedience. Their eyes were fixed only on what they had to do, and leaving God to act as he pleased, with all that concerned them, they endured the whole weight of that divine action. They groaned under the burden, but not for a single instant did they waver or pause. They believed that all would be well, provided that they kept on their way and let God act.